Sometimes in life, the moment you stop chasing is the moment everything starts chasing you, the job, the respect, the opportunities, even the love, because the less you care about forcing it, the more it finds its way to you. Detachment is not about not caring. It's about caring differently. Too often, we confuse attachment with love, with ambition, with passion. We think the tighter we hold on, the more secure we'll be. We think if we grip it, fight for it, suffocate it with our effort, it will stay. But life doesn't work that way. The things you cling to the hardest are often the first things to slip through your fingers. Why? Because desperation pushes people and opportunities away. Energy doesn't lie. If you're begging for it, chasing it, needing it, you're telling the world you don't believe you deserve it. Detachment, on the other hand, is a quiet confidence that says, if it's mine, it will come. If it's not, something greater will. Think about it. Have you ever wanted something so badly that it consumed you? Maybe it was a job. Maybe it was a relationship. Maybe it was the approval of someone who couldn't see your value. You gave it everything. You lost sleep. You replayed conversations in your head. You sacrificed your peace, your energy, and sometimes even your self-respect, just trying to hold on, but the tighter you held, the further it seemed to drift. That's attachment. That's a prison of your own making. Detachment is the opposite. Detachment is when you step back and say, I don't need this to complete me. I don't need this to prove my worth. If it fits into my life, good. If not, I will not bend myself until I break. That's not coldness. That's strength, and let me be clear, detachment doesn't mean laziness. It doesn't mean you stop working hard. It doesn't mean you stop caring about the people around you. It means you stop over-identifying with outcomes. You stop obsessing over things you cannot control. You give your best, but you don't let the result determine your peace. That's freedom. Because when you attach your happiness to the outcome, you set yourself up for misery. But when you detach and say, I gave my best, and that's enough, you walk with a different power. You carry a presence that doesn't beg, it attracts. People feel it when you are whole by yourself. They notice when you're not desperate for their approval, and ironically, that's when they start leaning in. There is something magnetic about a person who is detached. Think about the strongest people you've met. They're not the ones running around begging for attention. They're not the ones chasing validation. They walk into a room and they don't need to be seen, but everyone notices them anyway. Why? Because their value doesn't come from the room, it comes from within. Detachment says, I am enough before you approve of me. I am enough before you choose me. I am enough even if this opportunity passes me by. That kind of confidence cannot be faked. It comes from discipline. It comes from self-respect. It comes from understanding that peace is more expensive than attention, and you're not willing to trade one for the other. Now, here's the part that scares people. Detachment sometimes looks like loss. When you let go of chasing that person, you might lose them. When you stop begging for that promotion, you might be overlooked. When you quit trying to prove yourself to people who don't value you, they might walk away. And at first, that feels like failure. But look closer. Was it really loss, or was it freedom? Because when you detach, you allow what's not meant for you to leave, and you make space for what is truly yours to arrive. Life has a way of filling empty hands, but only when you unclench your fist. Only when you stop clinging to what was never designed for you in the first place. That's why detachment feels risky. It asks you to trust. It asks you to believe that you won't end up with less, but with better. Detachment is power. It shifts the energy. The less you care about controlling people, the more respect you gain. The less you obsess over being chosen, the more you're noticed. The less you demand recognition, the more recognition flows your way. Why? Because freedom is attractive. Because people sense when you're not dependent on them for your worth. And that's when they want to be around you. That's when life brings you opportunities. The irony of detachment is that the moment you stop gripping so hard, things start falling into place. You don't chase, you attract. You don't beg, you command. You don't worry. You work, you trust, and you grow. And suddenly, what was once running from you begins running toward you. Confidence is a language all on its own. You don't have to speak it, you show it. It's in the way you walk into a room without rushing to be noticed. It's in the way you hold your silence when everyone else is scrambling for approval. Confidence whispers where desperation screams, and that's why it always gets heard. People can sense need from a mile away. Need says, please like me, please notice me, please don't leave me. Confidence, on the other hand, says, I'm good with or without this. I want it, but I don't need it. And that difference changes everything. Because the more you need, the less people give, but the less you need, the more people want to give. Think about the people you admire most, the leaders, the creators, the ones who seem to command respect without asking for it. It's not always their talent that makes them magnetic. It's their confidence. You've probably seen it in small ways. A student in class who didn't talk much, but when they did, everyone leaned in. A coworker who never begged for recognition, but their presence was undeniable. They weren't chasing validation. They weren't desperate to be seen, and that's exactly why they were remembered. You see, need is heavy. It weighs down your words. It makes your actions shaky. But confidence is light. Confidence floats. Confidence enters a room and changes its temperature without even trying. The trap many people fall into is thinking confidence comes from having it all figured out, from being perfect, from never failing. That's not true. Real confidence doesn't come from perfection. It comes from acceptance. It comes from knowing you're flawed but still showing up. It comes from understanding that failure isn't final, it's fuel. And because you've accepted yourself, you don't need someone else to approve of you first. Need is born from insecurity. But when you ground yourself, when you look in the mirror and say, I am enough as I am, and I will grow as I go, then you're not chasing anyone's approval. That kind of confidence is louder than any words you could ever speak. Now, let's be honest. People are drawn to confidence because it's rare. Most people operate from need. Most people beg for attention without realizing it. They overshare, overpromise, overcompensate, and the more they do, the less value they carry. Why? Because in human nature, what is scarce becomes valuable. If confidence is scarce, it becomes priceless. And when you hold yourself with that calm certainty, others instinctively lean in. They start wondering, what does this person know about themselves that I don't? What makes them so at peace? Confidence creates curiosity. Need kills it. And when you understand this, you stop running after what should be running toward you. Confidence also protects you. When you operate from need, you accept less than you deserve. You beg for a seat at the table instead of building your own. You tolerate disrespect just to keep someone around. But confidence says, if you can't see my value, then I won't waste my time trying to convince you. That's strength. That's courage. And it's not arrogance. It's clarity. Because true confidence doesn't need to crush others. It doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove. It just is. And when you carry that kind of energy, you stop attracting takers and manipulators. You start attracting people and opportunities that match your level. Confidence acts as a filter. It removes the noise and reveals what's real. So let me tell you this. If you ever feel the urge to beg for attention, stop. If you ever catch yourself needing validation to breathe, pause, step back, remind yourself of this truth. Confidence will win every single time, not fake confidence, not ego, not arrogance, not pride, but grounded confidence. The kind that says, I know who I am, I know what I bring, and if this opportunity doesn't see it, I'll find one that does. That mindset makes you unshakable. That mindset makes you magnetic, and sooner or later, the world has no choice but to respond to it. Because confidence always speaks louder than need, always. Scarcity is what gives something its worth. Think about it. What's everywhere, what's easy, what's always available, people take for granted. But the moment something becomes rare, suddenly it's priceless. That's why diamonds are locked away in glass cases. That's why gold is protected in vaults. That's why time, the one thing we can never get back, is considered more valuable than money. Scarcity creates value, and the same is true for people. When you give yourself away too easily, your time, your energy, your attention, you tell the world that you're common. But when you become intentional with your presence, when you're not always accessible, when you know how to say no, suddenly your value rises. People begin to notice. People begin to respect. Too often, we sabotage our own worth because we're too available. We answer every call, reply to every text, show up to every event, give energy to every person who demands it. And then we wonder why people don't value us. They don't value us because we've trained them not to. If water came out of your tap only once a week, you'd treat every drop like treasure. But because it flows non-stop, you waste it without thought. That's how human nature works. Constant availability breeds carelessness. Scarcity breeds appreciation. If you want people to respect your presence, stop handing it out like it's free. Start acting like it's rare, because it is. This doesn't mean you play games or pretend to be someone you're not. Scarcity isn't about manipulation. It's about discipline. It's about knowing your worth so deeply that you don't throw it at anyone who doesn't deserve it. It's about protecting your energy the same way you protect your money, your reputation, your health. When you give it to everyone, it loses value. But when you give it carefully, deliberately, to the right people and the right places, it multiplies. The truth is, not everyone should have access to you. Not everyone deserves your time. Not every door should be opened just because someone knocks. Scarcity is not selfishness. It's wisdom. Scarcity also forces people to rise to the level of your value. When you're not easy to get, people work harder. They show up better. They treat you with more care. That's not arrogance. That's reality. Look at relationships. The person who gives without boundaries, who's always available, often gets treated with the least respect. But the one who knows when to step back, who isn't afraid to withhold their presence, is valued more. Why? Because scarcity signals importance. If something isn't everywhere, it must be worth more. That's why people line up for limited releases. That's why exclusivity sells. And if businesses understand this, why don't we apply it to our own lives? Here's the danger of ignoring scarcity. You burn out. You give and give and give until you have nothing left. You become so common that people stop noticing you. You become so available that people stop appreciating you. And then resentment builds, not just toward them, but toward yourself. You look in the mirror and wonder, why am I not being valued? But the truth is, value isn't given, it's set. And you set it by how you treat yourself, by how you protect your time, by how you enforce your boundaries. Scarcity is about creating an environment where people cannot take you for granted, where they understand your time is precious, your energy is priceless, and your presence is not guaranteed. So hear me clearly, scarcity is not about being absent. It's about being strategic. Show up where you're celebrated, not just where you're tolerated. Invest in relationships that invest back. Give your energy to opportunities that build you, not just drain you. When you do this, you'll notice something. People start to lean in. They start to pay attention. They start to value you, not because you begged for it, but because you carried yourself like someone who deserved it. And that's the paradox. The less you spread yourself thin, the more people want you. The less you give yourself away, the more valuable you become. That's the law of scarcity. That's how value is created. There's a strange paradox in life. The moment you stop chasing people, people start chasing you. The moment you stop begging for attention, attention finds you. Why? Because self-focus is magnetic. When you invest your energy into yourself, your growth, your craft, your peace, you become someone people can't help but notice. But when all your energy is spent chasing others, you fade into the background. See, the world doesn't truly admire those who beg for the spotlight. It admires those who build their own light and shine regardless of who's watching. The truth is, when you focus on yourself, the world has no choice but to turn its head. Too many people spend their lives trying to impress others, trying to prove their worth, trying to be seen. They bend, they break, they sacrifice their own dreams just to earn someone's approval. But here's the problem. Approval is never permanent. Today they clap, tomorrow they criticize. Today they cheer, tomorrow they forget. If your worth is tied to the crowd, you'll always be a prisoner of opinion. Self-focus is different. Self-focus says, I don't need your applause to grow. I don't need your validation to keep moving. I'm building whether you see me or not. And the irony is, the moment you stop chasing recognition, recognition begins chasing you. Think about the great athletes, the artists, the leaders who inspire us. Most of them didn't start out seeking fame. They started out in garages, empty gyms, late-night studios, focusing on themselves, perfecting their craft, building their discipline, and because they focused inward, the world eventually looked outward and took notice. The same principle applies to every area of life. If you're always chasing love, it runs. But when you build yourself, love finds you. If you're desperate for opportunity, it avoids you. But when you develop your skills, opportunity comes knocking. Self-focus doesn't mean selfishness. It means discipline. It means understanding that the best thing you can offer the world is the best version of yourself. The danger of neglecting self-focus is this: you lose yourself. You give so much trying to be seen, trying to be chosen, that you forget who you are. And when you forget who you are, even if people notice you, it won't last, because you're not standing on anything solid. But when you focus inward, you build a foundation no one can shake. You grow in silence. You strengthen your mind, your spirit, your skills. And when you finally step out, you don't have to beg to be seen. Your work speaks. Your presence speaks. Your energy speaks. And that voice is louder than any words you could use to convince someone of your value. Here's the beauty of self-focus. It makes you unpredictable. When you're chasing others, people can manipulate you. They know what buttons to press because your whole existence is tied to their reaction. But when you're focused on yourself, no one controls you. You're not moved by rejection. You're not broken by silence. You're not desperate for approval. You're too busy building. That kind of power is rare, and people feel it. They lean in because they can't figure you out. They want to know what drives you, what fuels you, why you're so unbothered. Self-focus creates a mystery, and mystery creates attraction. So if you feel invisible, if you feel overlooked, stop chasing. Stop begging. Stop pouring all your energy outward. Turn it inward. Work on your body, your mind, your spirit, your craft. Build discipline. Build confidence. Build a life so strong that whether people notice or not, you're still winning. And here's the truth: once you do, they will notice, because nothing draws attention like someone who doesn't need it. Nothing is more magnetic than a person who is whole by themselves. Self-focus is not about isolation. It's about elevation. And the higher you rise, the harder it is for the world to ignore you. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not absence. Silence is power. In a world where everyone is shouting to be heard, silence stands out. In a world where everyone is scrambling for attention, silence commands it. There's a reason the most powerful people in the room are often the quietest. They don't waste words. They don't need to. Their presence speaks louder than their voice. Silence, when used with intention, is magnetic. It makes people lean in. It makes people wonder what you're thinking, what you're planning, what you're capable of. Because silence creates space, and in that space, curiosity grows. The problem is, most people are terrified of silence. They fill every gap with noise. They explain too much, defend too much, talk too much, just to feel relevant. But every extra word they add chips away at their authority. Have you ever seen someone argue in circles, trying to prove their point, only to look weaker the longer they talk? Compare that to someone who makes their point once and then goes quiet, who looks stronger. The one who lets silence seal their words, because silence doesn't just hold space, it adds weight. The pause after a statement often speaks louder than the statement itself. That's the magnetism of restraint. Silence also protects your power. When you're constantly reacting, constantly explaining, constantly answering every little thing, you give people control over your energy. But when you learn to hold your tongue, to stay calm in the storm, you flip the script. You stop being predictable. You stop being easy to manipulate. You keep people guessing, and people fear what they can't figure out. That's why silence can be more intimidating than any outburst. A raised voice can be ignored, but silence lingers. It sits in people's minds. It forces them to reflect. It makes them wonder what you're really thinking, and that curiosity draws them toward you. Think about relationships, personal, professional, even romantic. The person who talks nonstop about their worth rarely convinces anyone. But the person who quietly demonstrates their worth, who doesn't chase, who doesn't over-explain, that's the person others respect. Silence says, I don't need to prove myself. My actions will speak for me. And that confidence is irresistible, because when you're silent, you give others room to reveal themselves. They fill the silence with their intentions, their fears, their truth. And while they're showing their hand, you're holding yours close. That's not just silence, that's strategy. Now, silence doesn't mean you never speak. It doesn't mean you hide or avoid confrontation. It means you choose your moment. You choose when to speak, when to respond, and when to let silence do the work for you. Because sometimes the loudest statement you can make is no statement at all. Sometimes walking away says more than arguing ever could. Sometimes the absence of a reaction burns hotter than the reaction itself. That's why silence is magnetic. It creates contrast. In a noisy world, silence is rare. And remember what we said about scarcity. What's rare becomes valuable. When your silence is intentional, it becomes priceless. So if you want to command more respect, stop filling the air with noise. If you want to draw people toward you, stop chasing with words. Let silence work for you. Let your actions, your discipline, your results do the talking. Speak less, move more. Talk less, build more. React less, grow more. Because silence is not emptiness. It's presence. And presence is magnetic. The less you give away with words, the more people lean in. The less you explain, the more people wonder. And in that wondering, in that leaning in, lies the quiet power of silence. That's why silence doesn't weaken you. It makes you unforgettable. Emotional control is the difference between power and weakness. It's the difference between leading and being led. The person who cannot control their emotions is always at the mercy of someone who can. Think about it. When you let anger, fear, jealousy, or insecurity run unchecked, you hand over your power. You become reactive instead of strategic. You let others push your buttons and decide your behavior. But when you master your emotions, when you can stay calm when others panic, when you can remain focused when others lose their heads, you become unstoppable. Because in a world built on reaction, composure is rare and rare is powerful. We've all been there. Someone disrespects you, and your first instinct is to lash out. Someone ignores you, and your instinct is to chase them harder. Someone doubts you, and your instinct is to overcompensate, to prove them wrong immediately. But every time you do that, you give them control. You're dancing to their rhythm, playing their game. Mastering emotional control means flipping the script. It means refusing to let someone else's behavior dictate your peace. It means saying, you don't get to control my energy. You don't get to decide how I move. I decide that. And that decision is where your real strength begins. Emotional control doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean you become a robot. It means you feel deeply, but you don't let those feelings drive recklessly. Anger can burn you down, or it can fuel your fire. Fear can paralyze you, or it can sharpen your focus. Even love, if desperate, can break you, but if grounded, it can build you. Mastery is not about denying emotions, it's about directing them. The river that floods destroys everything in its path. The river that's guided builds power, turns turbines, lights up cities. The emotion itself isn't the enemy. It's your lack of control. And once you understand that, you begin to harness emotions instead of being destroyed by them. Think about the strongest people you know. Not the loudest, not the angriest, but the strongest. Aren't they calm under pressure? Aren't they steady in the storm? That's not by accident. That's discipline. That's training. Because emotional control isn't natural. It's practiced. It's built in silence, in moments when you want to explode, but you choose to pause. It's built in the times when you want to prove yourself, but you choose to wait. And the more you practice restraint, the more powerful you become. The one who controls themselves cannot be controlled by anyone else. And that kind of freedom is magnetic. Here's the reality. People will test you. Life will test you. Opportunities will slip. Friends will betray. Critics will mock. Loved ones will disappoint. That's the guarantee. The question is not, will life hit me? The question is, how will I respond when it does? If you crumble every time, you'll never rise. If you lose yourself in anger every time, you'll never move forward. But if you master yourself, if you can breathe when others suffocate, if you can think when others panic, if you can remain grounded when others lose their footing, you will always have the advantage. Because storms don't destroy people who have learned how to anchor themselves. So hear me, the greatest victory you will ever win is over yourself. It's not about beating competitors, not about silencing critics, not even about proving anyone wrong. It's about mastering the battlefield inside your own mind. Because once you conquer that, everything else follows. The less you let your emotions control you, the more control you have over life, and that control makes you magnetic. It makes you respected. It makes you untouchable. Mastering emotional control doesn't just protect your peace, it makes you a force people can't ignore. Asterisk, so what does it all mean? It means the less you care about forcing things, the more life begins to flow toward you. When you detach, you gain power. When you walk with confidence, you stop needing approval. When you understand scarcity, you protect your value. When you focus on yourself, the world focuses on you. When you master silence, people lean in. And when you control your emotions, no one can control you. The truth is simple. You don't need to chase. You don't need to beg. You don't need to prove. You need to be. And when you stand in that strength, when you know your worth so deeply that you don't trade it for attention, you become magnetic. Opportunities come, respect comes, love comes, so stop gripping so hard. Stop trying to force the door open. Instead, stand tall, do the work, protect your energy, and let the world come to you, because it will, it always does. The less you care, the more everything you deserve will chase you. Asterisk.